Hi everybody, and I wanted to introduce you to this new video. It's going to be from basically when the BEI arrived until about the end of August. There's a lot of different things that happen, a little bit about how the BEI, what they are, how they treated us, me, a little bit about the things that we went through, realizing that we weren't going to get a lot of information, that we were being kept in the dark. And so that's going to be today's video. I'm sorry it's so long. Speed up the sound if it's too much. So thanks again for listening. And here it is. Hi, everyone. I want to first say thank you so much for watching the last video that I made regarding the night that Riley died. It means a lot to me. Not only, I appreciate your sympathy and your empathy very much, but I also think it's important that we're really aware of what's going on and how things seem to be operating here in the province. I know I just wanted to touch up on a couple things like that. I never really mentioned that I was doing all the talking in French. I think that's important because I am fluently bilingual. So a lot of my dealings from that night on, whether it was with the police officer at the scene and at the hospital as well, even though the nurse and the doctor, were able to speak in English and the receptionist, but the SQ officer was not. So, that's why I kind of take over because that's what I do because I live here in Quebec and, I've been hired a lot at many jobs because of that skill. So, again, I want to thank you. Please sign the petition if you haven't signed the petition. I didn't talk about that. I didn't realize how many people would look at this video. I have a petition online. I'm going to link it down below, or it's probably going to go down here. It's complicated it's not complicated, but you just have to be patient with the website. It's at asnat.qc.ca, something like that, but it'll be down there. It's for installation of body cams and also dash cams. We don't even have dash cams. I also made a video about why I started the petition. So, if you haven't looked at that, I talk about that. But, as long as, if you sign that petition, that would mean a lot to me. I only have until June 13th. So it's not just for me and for Riley. It's for, it's for everyone. It's for the police. It's for us. We have to just, we have to put a stop of all this nonsense that's going on. So I'm going to start from where I left off, which was basically when I got home from going to pick up Reagan and having just heard that my son had been shot by the police. I think it's important for you to also remember, during all that time, I truly believe that Riley had taken his own life, and it's just very different, and I mean, not that would be better, but this, with the police being involved, is certainly not better. I also want to say I'm quite naive in regards to, or I was before, in regards to how things operate in regards to the police. As being a first responder, I shouldn't even say that I was naive, because as a first responder, I did see oftentimes when you go onto a scene, whether if it's a death or a suicide or a car accident, if the police arrive there before you, they really like to have a lot of control over the scene. I don't think this is a confidential breach, and if it is, well, sue me. But I've been taught in my first responder courses that if a police officer will not give you access to a patient, that you should record him. We have a defibrillator. The defibrillator records everything you do. And you turn it on and you ask for their name and their badge number, and you tell them, please tell me that you won't give me access to the patient. And usually at times, we have access. I mean, we're able to be, careful. We're not going to like trample the scene. They can take our DNA and all that stuff to make sure, we're not going to contaminate the scene. We really care about a life, about lives, human beings. So I would say probably around 7:30. Again, the timeline, I'm really off, and it's very difficult for me to get any answers from anyone. It's really still difficult. I get it in like an eyedropper, It's like it's interesting. So on the 25th of July, so about 7:30, the Bureau d'enquête indépendant arrived at my house. I had two investigators that were there, and they proceeded to explain to me what the BEI was. There was one gentleman, he's a very nice man, and there was a woman, and she's a very nice woman. And they, questioned me about what had happened, from the minute I got the text message. I told them about how I arrived on the scene, and then I sat with the police officer and gave her a statement. And I was very upset about had given her that letter, but they were like, no, it's okay. And I was like, yeah, because that's what happened. And so I told them my version, and then they asked me about an Instagram post that Riley had put on. And I hadn't seen the Instagram post, so I couldn't even quote you it, but I know it was something about us not worrying about him anymore, and it was probably, I think, around 11:30, if I remember right. And so I hadn't seen it, and then my niece, there was a lot of people at my house at this time. My mom was there. Well, everybody kept trickling in, slowly but surely, and so my niece was there with my whole family, and she showed me the Instagram, and it was just all very sad. The BEI, I guess, questioned me. We talked about Riley's dad. I said how it would be super important that you make sure that someone speaks English, especially what had happened at the hospital, because the whole to-do, why there was a lot of yelling outside the hospital was because the SQ officer wouldn't speak English to him, and she wanted him to go sit in this tiny little room. And I didn't know that, it's all this after that, when you start to get a hold of yourself, that you start asking yourself questions, which we did. So on the BEI website, it says that at 1:20 they received a 911 call saying that there was a man dressed in black in the town of Brome Lake in the public area with a firearm, screaming, and that the police arrived and they tried to negotiate, gave some commands to the subject, and he did a menacing gesture, and they shot him, and that he died during a police intervention. So the BEI basically told me the same thing. I asked the BEI who called 911, and they said they think it's Riley. And I was shocked about that because, again, my mind would never, ever have gone there, ever. Just never. I thought a lot of things, but just never that. So I said, okay. So then I was trying, and that's about it, I don't think I asked them where Riley was shot. I don't think I asked them why I couldn't see Riley. And they said that was the BEI, that's their department, and it was up to them that they didn't let me see him, because I could have seen him at the hospital. I could have held him while he was still warm, but they didn't let me see him, and I didn't push it much because, they had put it in my head that I wouldn't want to see him that way, and I don't know. I was just in shock, and I just felt So with the BEI statement and all that, the media was coming in while they were questioning me. They were calling, they were knocking on the door. It was just on Facebook Messenger. I had people calling me, coming in and out of the house. It was just insane. By the time the BEI left, they had to have a lot of people's names and addresses. I appreciate all of you that came by. All of you that were thinking of me and sent me a message. Like it was truly, it was just amazing. I didn't understand why the media was at my house, considering it's my personal home and it didn't happen here. And my mom said to me that she'd heard my address on the news at 6 o'clock. 6 a.m. she'd heard my street address. So the BEI explained to me how they work, how they're transparent, how they, investigate, that they're going to get to the bottom of it, that they're going to shed the most light. They were pretty surprised that the media was here, but they were like, I didn't feel like talking to them. It was like the whole Instagram thing. It was just a lot of stuff that I just wasn't able to handle. So the BEI eventually left, and I'm not going to talk too much about Riley's dad's story because it's his story to tell. So the BEI left, and then I just sat around with my family and we just started to speculate. And speculate I did, because they really didn't give me any details. They said that, they had to investigate everybody, like the SPVM was there. They told me that the cops had to follow the rules, that everything had happened. I asked him, what about the police officer that shot Riley? And he said that they were in the hospital and suffering from a post-traumatic stress, but it's not post-traumatic stress. It's like shock subit, like a sudden shock. Post-traumatic is something that happens. Like it's probably something he'll suffer from later on, but at that point, that was what he was suffering from. But that's I felt, I felt for him. Like, I know that cop didn't think he was going to go shoot some kid that night. I do have empathy. It's something I have. I can put myself easily in someone else's shoes. So because they hadn't given me a lot of information, I started speculating. Because I am a first responder, so I kind of understand how the 911 stuff happens. So I figured, okay, so he called 911, and then he saw the cops coming and must have sent me the text. And then, then whatever, I'm speculating in my brain. The cops jumped out of their car, and because they have the speaker inside the car, so I'm not sure that they were outside. I said they jumped out of the car, like, because they'd been driving really fast, and they just shot him. That's what I thought. Like, Riley made a move, and they just shot him. So I knew Riley hadn't shot the BB gun, so I knew it wasn't that. The BEI had told me that. So I thought that for like a long time. Like, I don't know. It's just because of my timing and how I arrived there. I said, because by the time they shot him, they called 911 to have the paramedics come, and the first responders come. I arrived all kind of at the same time, which, so I feel like I got the call pretty much at the same time. I live a little bit closer, but, I did walk around a little bit in the house. I got dressed, maybe like a minute or two. But anyways, the timing has always been something for me, because it happened very quickly. So I'm sure I was there between 1:52. Like, nobody wants to tell me, or nobody can tell me. So that's about it with the BEI being at my house, investigating me, telling me that they were going to knock on all the doors. They were going to look for video camera evidence. And so then I was like, oh, they don't have I said, oh, there must be a camera in the car. And they were like, no. So I was like, whoa, okay. So I didn't really know any of this, but so that's that part of the investigation, which I'm going to get into probably in the third video. But now I want to talk to you a little bit about how we were treated as victims. I'd like to consider myself a victim, even though it took me a couple of weeks. Nobody's called me a victim. On July 25th. Yeah. So in the afternoon, I received a phone call. That's the afternoon of Riley's death. And nobody's, I'm in shock. There's a ton of people at my house. Somebody called me. They wanted me to be a witness because Larry had been arrested for threatening to kill a police officer. And then they wanted to talk to me, and they were wondering if they could come over. And I was like, yeah, okay. And then I hung up the phone, and then I was like, no, I didn't know what they were doing or talking about. I had seen that, there was some stuff that had happened in front of Larry's house. So I assumed he'd gotten arrested because I had heard he'd been arrested and released. But so I thought it was for disturbing the peace or something like that. And then it come to find out that they actually arrested him for threatening to kill a police officer. And it came from, I believe, the SQ officer that I was speaking to. So they needed me to be a witness, but I'm not sure if Larry was the one that even answered the phone. So that's my statement. The charges were dropped eventually a few months later, but it was quite an ordeal, like just the stress of that. So on the 26th of July, I saw the first responder that was there at the scene, and I asked her, where Riley was shot, because nobody had told me yet. I had gone to the funeral home to start making the plans for that, and nobody had told me where he was shot. The hospital wouldn't tell me, and the BEI wouldn't tell me, so she told me. I don't know if I want to say it on a video. A lot of people know, and I'm gonna say. So I do know where he was shot, but I didn't get that information from any official place like hospital, coroner, morgue, whatever, BEI, SQ, no one. So on the 27th of July, I get a call from the BEI, and he tells me that Riley's ready because Riley had gone to Montreal for the autopsy, and that I had to call their office and let them know that, like where to send him. So this is like a day and a half after, and he gives me like the file number and all that. So I call, and then when I call, they were really rude to me at the coroner's office. They were like, well, it's not you that's supposed to call. And I'm like, well, the BI told me it was a new way. And she's like, no. So I got the runaround there, and here all I am is I need to release Riley's body. So I called the funeral home, and they were I said, well, Riley's ready. And they're like, well, how do you know that? And they were like, well, they called me to call the coroner, to call you, and then to call you. And he was just like, because he couldn't believe that. So, that happened. And I haven't received any other, like my personal psychologist, and I didn't go see personally the doctor yet because it's still pretty early. So on the July 28th, I did get a little bit more detail regarding the incident, and I'm not going to go into the details, but I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my investigative prowess, I guess. A friend of mine is a friend of one of the police officers that was there, who's the tactical guy. So I did get a little bit of information via him. We had called him on the Friday, and he said, well, I have to meet with the BEI on in an hour or so. And I can't talk about it, but I can call you tomorrow. So on the next day, this Saturday, we got a little bit more information from that. So on July 29th, which I guess is this Sunday, I started talking a little bit to people. I was going to this site. There was quite a memorial going on. I don't want to talk too much about those things because those are quite personal and they're very sad. And like this is just about how how things are going. So on the 29th, I started talking a little bit to a friend of mine about how Riley died and where he was shot. And he was like, well, that's not what I heard. And, I really had stayed away from the media, any newsprint, Facebook. I was only reading good stuff. I was talking to my friend, and then he starts telling me all kinds of things, that Riley was shot 5 times, that Riley was shot in the arm, that Riley was shot in the head, and that, all of these different versions. And it was just making me really sick to my stomach. So, anyways, I got mad at him. I got mad at a few people, and, I made a scene. But that's what I do. And I feel injustice, whether it's for me or anyone. And I question. I don't, if it's wrong, it's wrong. There was just stuff. I just couldn't take it. So, on the 30th of July, I received the letter because I had asked for the coroner's investigation, a public coroner's inquest, and it was just basically saying that he had to wait for the BEI investigation. So I wasn't going to be able to get an autopsy from there, or the reason of why Riley, or how Riley died. So on the 31st of July, I had been a little bit in contact with the BEI because a lot of Riley's friends had contacted me and had been in contact with Riley that evening, and so I had given the BEI their phone number, and then I'd heard from a witness that she lived close by and that she'd heard a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit, but nobody had contacted her yet. So I gave the BEI that information as well. And then about August 2nd, I contacted a lawyer. And I just basically contacted a lawyer because, well, first of all, Larry had one. So it was basically the same. I'm kind of the communicator in this family. So I was being asked a lot of questions through him, and I needed to have some answers. And it was basically the same information I'm always getting, is that you have to wait until the investigation is over. There's really not a lot you can do until the investigation is over. So on August 5th, I send my BEI guy that, some more information. He tells me he's on vacation. He calls me the next day on the 6th, and he's gone on vacation. So that's really, honestly, the very first day that I started doubting the BI, seriously doubting. I was already doubting them because I was finding them all these witnesses. They had left town. They left that afternoon and never to return to Knowlton. So, yeah, he's on vacation, and all I could think of is he's telling me he's up north somewhere, and I was like, oh my god. He's all I kept thinking was he's calling me on Monday morning in his Speedo. It was just crazy. So on August 8th, I realized, we had Riley's funeral on that weekend, and August 8th, I realized I had a friend that used to be an SQ officer. And I was like, yes, it's crazy that you forget you have these people. I had met him a few years ago, and I knew he'd been retired for about 10 years. So I'm like, I'm going to call him because nobody could tell me the protocol. Nobody could tell me if that cop was still working. I was asking a lot of questions to the BI, little questions like that, and they just couldn't tell me. So I talked with him for a long time, and he told me about all these services that are available to families that are victims, and that, Riley being a minor, that I could file for him, because usually, yeah. So there's aid for the family, and then there's aid for the person who's the victim of a crime. And I was like, well, the BI says he's not a victim. And he's like, well, yeah, you're a victim. They don't consider it a victim because of the legal lingo and all that. But yeah, you're a victim. So, he gave me a lot of information. He was like, you follow your gut. That's all he kept saying to me. It's follow your gut, follow your gut. because he's like, we do a lot of training, and this isn't something that should have happened. So, and he's from the townships here. So, so on August 9th, I called CAVAC, which is the help for me, because then they could help me with EVAC, which is the help for Riley being a victim. So it took a couple of days for me to get EVAC to help to come through. I had to call Denis Paradis' office to get anyone to call me back. I finally had received a call back, and the reason why I was having a lot of difficulty was that the CAVAC in the Estrie, which is in Granby, wasn't going to be able to help me. And the reason they weren't going to be able to help me with anything was because the SQ was involved, and it would be a conflict of interest. So that I should go to the Montérégie, which is in Longueuil, which is okay. So and I'm starting to see at this point, I was starting to get on the English issue. Like, I wanted to start grieving in my own language. I'm talking to all my friends in English. But yet, whenever I'm talking to, police or hospital or anybody, I'm having to speak in French, which is okay, but sometimes it's just exhausting. So, I called the Townshippers Association, and I wanted to talk about my treatment that we'd had at the hospital. I figured I had to find some kind of mission that I could accomplish, something that I could absolutely do. It took about a month and a half in order for me to get any help from La Cap. La Cap is a place that will help you if you have any kind of problem with the hospital. If you do, it's important that we complain. I think that's our big problem. We think that we're alone in this, but if there's, if you look around in a room and there's 10 of you in the room, there might be that one person, that's had a bad experience. And you know what? It doesn't mean that somebody's going to get fired. Trust me, nobody gets fired. But they might, they might be able to make changes. So, I didn't feel like we'd been looked after. We hadn't been given any information about the CAVAC, the EVAC, nothing like that. So thanks for listening again. I'm going to end right here. I'm going to make another video. I'm sorry if it's too long for you. It's just a lot of information, and it's really hard to make these videos. So the next video is going to be really what my questions. You'll see how simple they are. Some are a lot more complicated, and I understand. I think it's important that you realize that we're at the mercy of many of our governmental services, that we can't keep quiet about it. I'm not going to. I don't mind fighting this alone. I don't feel alone. I'm very surrounded. It's not what I mean when I say I'm alone. I mean, I'm alone by my government's not there protecting me. I've been, so it's important that we talk about it and that we're aware. And I think that's the thing, is that we're not aware. So, the more you know. So it's going to be my after school special like that I used to watch when I was a kid. Thanks again for listening. Look in the description box for signing the petition and all that. I'm going to do another video, and then we'll see from there. Subscribe, thumbs up, all that. I appreciate you. Thank you.